Picture a massive, ancient oak tree standing alone in a quiet meadow. Its bark is thick. Its leaves are vibrant green. Its branches stretch proudly toward the sky. From the outside, it looks almost indestructible. But deep inside the trunk, microscopic termites have been carving tiny hollow pathways for years. Then, one calm afternoon, no wind, no warning, the entire tree collapses, not because of what happened that afternoon, because of what had been happening silently for years. Right now, something eerily similar can happen inside your body. Beneath your skin, billions of cells are constantly repairing damage, removing waste, fighting threats, and rebuilding themselves. Most of the time, you never notice any of it, but when inflammation, cellular damage, and impaired repair mechanisms persist for years, the same systems designed to protect you can begin contributing to the damage. And here's the strange part. This isn't simply because your body is weak. It's partly because the machinery that kept your ancestors alive can behave very differently when exposed to modern, long-lasting stress. You woke up today feeling normal. You ate breakfast. You walked around. You worked. You laughed. Your body gave you no warning that anything was wrong. But beneath all of that, thousands of biological processes were constantly making decisions about what to repair, what to destroy, and what to protect. So what happens when those systems stay switched on for too long? To understand it, we need to uncover 3 biological mysteries. First, how the barrier separating your gut from your bloodstream can become more permeable, and why scientists are investigating its connection to inflammation. Second, how damaged and senescent cells can remain in your tissues and release signals that affect the cells around them. And third, how chronic inflammation interacts with cellular aging, tissue repair, and the biological systems that help determine how quickly our bodies decline. Each layer builds on the last. And by the end, you'll understand why aging isn't simply a clock counting down. It's a battle between damage and repair happening inside you every second. To understand how this silent process begins, we need to look at one of the most important systems in the human body, the immune system. Its job is simple in principle. Find danger, heat it, repair the damage, then shut down. But that final step matters more than most people realize. Inflammation is incredibly useful when it's temporary. Cut your skin. And inflammation helps begin the healing process. Fight an infection, and inflammatory signals help coordinate your immune response. The problem begins when inflammatory signaling doesn't fully resolve. Researchers use the term to describe the chronic, low-grade inflammatory state associated with aging and a range of age-related biological changes. It doesn't mean inflammation is the only cause of aging. It isn't. Aging is far more complicated than that. But chronic inflammation appears to interact with many of the systems involved in aging, from immune function and cellular repair to blood vessels and tissue regeneration. Which raises a disturbing question. How can the same immune system that protects you also contribute to damage? The answer isn't a single molecule. It's a chain reaction. And that chain reaction begins at some of the body's most important barriers. Let's break it down deep. Inside your abdomen is one of the body's most important interfaces. Your digestive tract contains trillions of microorganisms, food particles, and chemical compounds. Yet just beyond that environment is your internal circulation. Between them sits the intestinal barrier. It isn't simply a wall. It's a sophisticated living system made from cells, mucus, immune defenses, and molecular structures that regulate what can pass through. Among those structures are connections between intestinal cells that help control the movement of substances between them. And one molecule scientists have studied extensively in this process is called zonulin. When signaling involving zonulin increases, tight junctions can become more permissive. This is part of a complex biological system, not a simple on and off switch. But when intestinal barrier function becomes impaired, substances that normally remain inside the gut can have greater access to the body's immune system. And that's where things become interesting. Your immune system doesn't simply sit there waiting for a giant infection. It is constantly sampling its environment. If it detects signals associated with danger, it responds. Inflammatory pathways activate, immune cells move in, chemical signals spread. Usually, this response is controlled. The problem is when the underlying stimulus persists. Instead of a short alarm followed by silence, the system can remain activated, not necessarily in one dramatic explosion, but as a low-level background signal, a biological fire that never completely goes out. And that brings us to the second mystery. Because inflammation doesn't only affect the immune system, it can change the behavior of the cells themselves. To understand the second stage, we need to meet one of the strangest types of cells in your body. They are sometimes called, not because they're literally alive and dead at the same time, but because they can remain metabolically active after they have permanently stopped dividing. Normally, when cells become severely damaged, they have several possible fates. Some repair themselves. Some are removed by the immune system. Others can enter a controlled state known as senescence. Senescence can actually be useful. It can prevent damaged cells from continuing to divide uncontrollably. In other words, senescence is partly a protective mechanism. But here's the problem. If senescent cells accumulate and aren't efficiently cleared, they don't simply sit there doing nothing. Many release a collection of signaling molecules known as the or SASP. These signals can influence neighboring cells. They can promote inflammatory activity, they can alter tissue behavior, and they can potentially make the surrounding environment more favorable to additional cellular dysfunction. It's a little like having a damaged factory that has stopped producing products, but continues sending warning signals throughout the entire industrial complex. One damaged factory isn't necessarily catastrophic, but imagine thousands of them, spread across different tissues, persisting for years. That changes the environment around them. And this is where the story gets even stranger, because some of the signals produced during cellular damage can expose the immune system to molecules it normally doesn't encounter outside the cell. And one of the most fascinating examples comes from the ancient machinery inside almost every cell. Around 1.5 billion years ago, something extraordinary happened in the history of life. A primitive cell engulfed another organism, but instead of destroying it, the two organisms formed a partnership. Over immense periods of evolutionary time, that partnership became permanent. The captured organism eventually evolved into what we now call the mitochondrion. Today, mitochondria are often described as the powerhouses of our cells, but they still carry something remarkable: their own DNA. That DNA is a molecular reminder of their ancient bacterial ancestry. Under normal conditions, your immune system knows the difference between your healthy cells and an invading bacterium. But when cells are severely damaged, cellular contents can escape into surrounding tissues. Among those contents can be mitochondrial components, including mitochondrial DNA. Because mitochondrial DNA contains molecular features associated with bacterial ancestry, the immune system can recognize certain forms of extracellular mitochondrial material as danger signals. It's not literally mistaking your mitochondria for bacteria in every situation. It's more subtle than that. Your immune system is responding to molecular patterns that resemble those associated with microbial danger, and that response can amplify inflammation. So the strange truth is this: a piece of your own evolutionary history can become a signal of danger when it appears in the wrong place. Your ancient cellular machinery can accidentally help trigger a modern inflammatory response. And once inflammation becomes persistent, another system begins to feel the pressure: your blood vessels. Your arteries are not rigid pipes, they're living tissue. They expand, they contract, they respond to pressure, and they constantly interact with immune cells and signaling molecules. Chronic inflammation is associated with changes in the structure and function of blood vessels. Over time, inflammation can contribute to endothelial dysfunction, plaque formation, and changes in the arterial wall. One of the major proteins associated with systemic inflammation is, or CRP. CRP is useful to scientists and doctors as a marker of inflammation, but it would be misleading to imagine CRP simply attaching to an artery and directly pulling calcium into it. The biology is much more complicated. Atherosclerosis involves interactions among cholesterol-containing particles, immune cells, damaged vascular tissue, connective tissue, and eventually processes that can lead to calcification. Over years, these changes can make arteries less flexible. And that matters, because blood vessels are designed to absorb the force generated by every heartbeat. When they become stiffer, the cardiovascular system has to work differently. The important point isn't that one molecule causes the entire process. It's that long-term inflammation can become part of a much larger network of biological changes. And that brings us to the third mystery, the biology of cellular aging itself. Inside the nucleus of almost every cell is your DNA. It's organized into chromosomes. And at the ends of those chromosomes are protective structures called telomeres. Think of them as protective caps. Every time many types of cells divide, telomeres become progressively shorter. Eventually, critically shortened telomeres can contribute to a state where cells stop dividing normally. But here's an important distinction. Telomeres are not a single master clock that determines exactly how old you are. They are one part of a much larger network of biological aging mechanisms. Chronic inflammation can increase the demand for tissue repair. More repair can mean more cellular replication in certain tissues. And repeated replication can contribute to telomere shortening. At the same time, inflammation can interact with oxidative stress, DNA damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, and cellular senescence. These systems don't operate independently. They form a network. Damage creates stress. Stress alters cellular behavior. Altered cellular behavior can create more inflammatory signals. And those signals can influence neighboring cells. The result is a feedback loop. Not a single switch, not a single disease. A network. And that's what makes biological aging so difficult to stop with one simple solution. Most of what we've discussed happens gradually. But inflammation doesn't always move slowly. In severe infections and certain other medical emergencies, the immune response can become dangerously dysregulated. One example is a state in which inflammatory signaling becomes excessive and contributes to widespread tissue damage. Instead of a low-level process unfolding over decades, the response can escalate dramatically over a much shorter period. Multiple organs can become affected. Blood vessels can become dysfunctional. Tissues can be damaged. And the body's own defense system can become part of the problem. It's a frightening demonstration of how powerful the immune system really is. The same machinery that can save your life during an infection can become dangerous when regulation breaks down. But why would a system this sophisticated be vulnerable to modern life? For that, we need to zoom out. For most of human evolutionary history, threats were often immediate: a wound, an infection, a period of starvation, a physical confrontation. The immune system evolved to respond quickly, detect danger, attack, repair, recover. But modern environments can expose us to a different kind of challenge, not necessarily one giant threat, but a collection of smaller, persistent stressors: poor sleep, physical inactivity, long-term psychological stress, highly processed diets, environmental exposures, and other factors that can influence metabolic and inflammatory health. Our biology wasn't designed around a world where every stressor could remain switched on indefinitely. That doesn't mean modern life is automatically destroying your body. And it doesn't mean every modern food or lifestyle choice causes inflammation. The reality is more complicated. But the mismatch is worth thinking about because the human body is incredibly good at responding to danger. What it struggles with is knowing what to do when the signal never completely disappears. We're carrying an ancient biological toolkit into a world our ancestors never experienced. And the battlefield isn't somewhere outside us. It's inside us every second. And here's where the story takes one final turn, because the immune system isn't the only hidden network influencing your body. Deep inside your digestive tract is another remarkable system. It contains hundreds of millions of neurons and communicates constantly with the brain through multiple pathways. Your gut doesn't control your consciousness, but it can influence digestion, stress responses, immune activity, and aspects of mood and behavior. And the communication goes both ways. Your brain talks to your gut talks back. Which means the biology happening inside your digestive system may influence far more than what happens to your food after you swallow it. It may be part of a much larger conversation between your brain, your immune system, your metabolism, and the trillions of microorganisms living inside you. And that leads to a much bigger question. If your gut can communicate with your brain, how much of what you think and feel is influenced by biology happening somewhere you can't even see? So, are you really in complete control of your body and mind? Or are you constantly being influenced by microscopic systems operating beneath your awareness? The answer isn't as simple as one or the other. You are your biology, but you're also constantly changing it. Every day, your cells repair damage, your immune system makes decisions, your nervous system adapts, your gut communicates with your brain, and your body is continuously trying to maintain one incredibly difficult balance. Understanding that balance may be one of the keys to understanding aging itself. If you want to go deeper into the hidden conversation happening between your gut and your brain, subscribe, because in the next video, we're going inside the gut-brain connection and uncovering how the microscopic world inside you may influence how you think, feel, and respond to the world around you.